Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 71st episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. As is often the case, when I record one episode, it just completely blows my own mind because sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to say. And then it just triggers a new inspiration for yet another video. And of course, I have to record it, otherwise, I can't sleep. So here goes. In this video, I'd like to revisit source creation. The whole process according to this new model that I've developed in the last 4 or 5 episodes or so. So I really encourage you to look at those. So let's just examine the travel or the process of source. Source is something that is beyond duality, a sort of unity or singularity, which is impossible to grasp because it encompasses things that are as opposite as existence and non-existence, or nothingness and infinity. So then it expresses itself in two, which I would say is, first of all, zero and infinity. But from those, it has to sort of take on a specific form. Otherwise, it's too limitless. From zero, it will manifest the world of vibrations. Vibrations of basically zeros interacting with each other, you could say. Nothingness interacting with each other, which enters into a sort of a vibratory state. Infinity will organize itself into multiverses, which is basically as if every single universe was a neuron linked to other universes and they form a neural network. That is how sort of infinity scales down from infinity into something less infinite, but still quite infinite. Multiverse. And nothingness becomes something, but still not too much of something. And then the death, quote unquote, of multiverses is the same as if your body dies and its parts sort of decompose and regain their individual sense of consciousness. Well, that scales down into universes. And so basically, the Big Bang is the result of the death of a multiverse, where our universe entered into existence or gained its own sort of unique individual consciousness because the multiverse that it was a part of decomposed. And of course, there's always a two-way process in death. When a certain layer stopped experiencing itself, some of it goes back to source infinity and some of it scales down. So here, when these sort of waves start interacting or stop interacting, when they're done, some of them die where they superimpose upon each other and they go back to nothingness. Some of them die and form the photon, which, as I've explained, is to me a sort of the first black hole, which enables to um, wrap vibrations in such a way that they don't superimpose and cancel each other out. And these are aligned, if you will. And there's a sort of a reality that forms here between them. And so in the beginning of the universe, the only reality was a multiverse made of pure sound or vibration. Then as this internal present sort of evolves, it is universes, individual universes made up of light. And this evolves like this. And then again, the photon decomposes into vibrations, and its decomposition sort of helps other vibrations achieve the level of the photon because it's a kind of a learning dual process. And when the photon decomposes or dies, it goes to the higher layer, which is subparticles or quarks or whatever. And the universe decomposes into galaxies or clusters. You could say galactic clusters or galaxies. I don't really know actually because it's a bit too detailed here, but you get the logic. So when the universe decomposes or dies, part of it informs or goes back to the multiverse to inform it and help it evolve, and part of it decomposes into galaxies. And in the next level now of reality, you now have galaxies made up of subparticles, and so on and so forth, and it sort of compresses and condenses itself, where then you have atoms. Maybe here you have galaxies. Then you have molecules, solar systems, or suns, stars. Maybe actually stars should be aligned with atoms and solar systems with molecules. Because again, planets is the higher, is sort of what you can build from molecules at the higher scale. Atoms, you can build stars out of atoms. And of course, this is messy, so I'm really sorry, but I just wanted to get it out of my head. So sorry if this episode is going to be even worsely drawn than my other ones. Going a little bit further, so these are aligned and sort of mirror each other, where you have a downscaling of infinity towards nothingness and an upscaling from nothingness into infinity. So what is aligned then? Molecules and planets are aligned. Molecules and planets. Molecules. And then what? Then you have life. And what's on the other side here? I'm wondering if it isn't actually a conscious planet, which is a collective consciousness of human beings. That is how planets basically downscale. But I guess actually what might happen is that the level of consciousness and the lessons learned on the lower level of the scale as they evolve informs the higher scale, which is the level of consciousness that is achieved from the human being, for instance, then sort of helps the multiverse gain a higher sense of consciousness, the universe get a higher sense of consciousness, the galaxies a higher sense of consciousness. And so when we're saying that we're the universe observing itself, like I said, everything observes everything else, and everything sort of helps everything else gain a higher sense of consciousness of itself. And so you have a version of planets that are quote unquote just rocks. And that is when you have this level here, where the molecule and the planets are aligned in a sort of reality, mirrored because they're zero and infinity downscaling and zero going towards infinity. But once the human being sort of appears, then it helps all of the different layers gain a higher sense of consciousness. And so you have a version of the planet which is aligned with the molecule and is kind of just a rock. But then you have a version of the planet which is actually conscious. You have a version of the stars that are conscious, a version of the galaxies that are conscious. And so as more and more consciousnesses sort of fill this gap, then it re-expands back into a consciousness which is able to re-encompass everything and make the bridge between zero and infinity, and then maybe collapse back into singularity, but with the knowing of itself, the just going full circle. And we haven't reached that yet, obviously. I don't think so. But in this process that I've described here, there are magical thresholds which we call the ascension process. It is when instead of death being the manner in which consciousness sort of splits and descends into divides into either goes back to its fundamental parts or goes to the higher level that it is what it is made of, like for instance photons jumping, the consciousness that sort of views the universe through the eyes or through the form of the photon, then would split at death into either going back to vibrations or going straight to subparticles. The ascension process is doing that with, in a progressive way, with time and space and, all of the different steps, instead of this jumping and requiring death. So that's a real magical moment. It's almost like the moment, for instance, imagine if the universe would sort of rekindle the links with other universes and reform the multiverse, instead of having to collapse upon itself and then revert back to the different parts that it is made of. That's why it's so rare, basically, is that typically the universe evolves through the death of these key layers or parts, and the consciousness is sort of jumping from one to the other, rather than the progressive experience of going from one to the other but keeping the same form. So maybe I'll have more to say about this. This is still very fresh, but I just wanted to have a good night's sleep, I guess, and hopefully that'll be achieved with this video, with the publishing of this video. And I hope you found this interesting. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Maybe that'll trigger another inspiration and more videos to come. So thank you very much, and talk to you next time.